Excuse me, everyone. Excuse me, everybody in Book Bar. Everybody in here. There's a lot of people. Why are y'all here? I don't understand. This is weird. So my name's Tommy. I've been working here for, there it goes. I've been working here for, I guess, 3 years now. This place was a lot more humble 3 years ago than it is today, evidenced by this room right now. This is really extraordinary, and this isn't the first time we've done CBA readings. It certainly is not going to be the last if we have any say in that. It's really, really great to see this many people here because local authors, Colorado authors, are the lifeblood of our store. Local writing and the people supporting it are why we're here today. And it's why hopefully we're going to continue to be here in the future because there are so many people here to support local writers, which is what makes this store special, that we're able to host these people and provide a forum for them. We love that. We can't get enough of it. So having said that, we've been here for almost 4 years now. We've expanded dramatically. We're having a great time. We can't get enough of these events. This is the CBA it's 2017. For anybody who wasn't clear on that. But I'm going to bring Josephine up here. She's going to introduce all of our readers tonight. It's genre fiction, mystery, and thriller. So get excited, everybody. Thank you so much for being here.
So I cannot say enough about how great the Book Bar is. They are our bookseller for our 3rd year this year for Colorado Book Awards. And just like our army of volunteers who do all our adjudication, it's the people of Colorado who make this award system happen, as well as Bess Mayer, our program coordinator for CBA, who's kicking off tonight, so let's just give her a hand. This is our 26th annual Colorado Book Awards. We are the 2nd oldest book award, state book award in the country, chasing Florida. And this is our first finalist reading of the year. I'm so glad you're here to help us celebrate this wonderful local town. I appreciate this opportunity to introduce you to 8 authors tonight. And genre fiction will start, followed by mystery and thriller, because we figured if you started getting sleepy, then you had thriller at the end. Keep you up. We will be keeping everyone to their 5 to 7 minutes that we've asked all our poor authors to only share a little bit. I will set their books up unless they protest loudly with the description that they submitted with their entry. At Colorado Humanities, funded by you've heard of it, the National Endowment for the Humanities. Everybody say it with me. Yeah. The National Endowment for the Humanities, which at this moment still exists. We're about 40% funded by that. Wonderful agency. I encourage advocacy for us and our sister organization, the National Endowment for the Arts. But enough of that. After the humanities, we are all about the conversation, so you will have the opportunity to ask questions of every author. You will have the opportunity at the end to ask questions of all the authors. We'll get the authors left standing photo at the end of the evening. Our first reader this evening is, I hope it's Kevin Eikenberry.
Good.
Good?
You got it.
Reading from his science fiction novel, Sleeper Protocol. Kevin is a lifelong space geek and retired Army officer. Kevin is also a former manager of the U.S. Space Camp program and an executive with 2 Challenger Learning Centers. He is the author of the military science fiction novel Runs in the Family. Kyrian Roark awakes in a wheelchair, unable to remember anything. Our recorder is refusing to stand it. As part of a classified experiment, he will have 1 year to learn his identity and recover his memory, or he will be euthanized by the state. Scientist Berkeley Bennett has one mission: manipulate Kieran's emotions in an attempt to bring back his memory, but of course she falls in love with him, and she is forced to make a harrowing decision that may cost Kieran his life. What Kieran knows could save Earth from a coming war, and whether he believes the future is worth saving is another matter. Racing across an unfamiliar world in a body he does not recall, and that is one of my favorite phrases in the book descriptions I've read so far. In a body he does not recall, Kieran needs to discover who he was, and more importantly, who he is. Please, Kevin.
I have to say real quickly, thank you to everybody for being here tonight, and for Colorado Humanities and Book Bar for putting on this event. This is tremendous to see everybody. Hopefully the air conditioning can keep up and we all don't get too hot before long. Sleeper Protocol is an incredible story that came to me in one line that I thought was going to be the greatest line in history, and it was cut by my editor, so you don't get to hear that. But most people know the story, at least some of the folks here in the room know, that in between the rough draft and the polished draft of this novel, its author almost died. I had an infection that almost killed me, that basically tried to eat my right leg. And putting this novel together was one of the things that helped me recover, alongside the support of so many friends and family. My wife Kelly is with me this evening, and honestly I wouldn't be standing here without them. So Sleeper Protocol is a story of a soldier from our time who wakes up 300 years in the future without a clue as to his identity. He's given 1 year to figure that out, but also he has to figure out if the future world is worth saving. And so he does this by experience, and sooner or later his experiences start pulling him to a place that he believes is his home. So I'm going to read tonight from a point about a third of the way through the novel where he has decided it's time to go home, and he has arrived in a very different North America. I heard them long before I saw them. The chorus of wailing voices and incoherent screams rang above the 50-foot concrete wall separating the Republic of California from the frontier. Berkeley and I walked in a cool winter rain that melted the snow and left a haze across the horizon. The air smelled of burnt rubber and oil, the bright lights and audacity of the continuous metropolis of California at our backs. Raindrops hung like diamonds on the rows of razor wire atop the wall, angled into the frontier to keep out the unwanted. The armed guards with sniper rifles scattered along the top were overkill, but it was typical. California exuded domination of the landscape. What I'd known as Nevada and Arizona met the same fate as Oregon and Washington, ceasing to exist in California's search for resources and living space. Our shadows stretched under the searchlights as we neared a complex of buildings at the base of the wall. Heavy steel doors sat closed against the hordes that stood on the other side, demanding entry. There was no one waiting to leave California. Trash swept through the deserted queues and filled the corners and crevices around the building. A bullet-riddled sign read "Port of Entry, knock for admittance." 10 times I thumped my fist against the steel door before the heavy lock slid open. Inside we found a barely conscious guard with a pot belly and crazy eyes. We looked at each other for a moment, saying nothing. Card. I handed him the thin metal card given to me at the integration center and waited, wishing that I could read the information he consulted on his screen. In 30 seconds, he knew more about me than I did. He snorted, and I caught a whiff of peyote. Aside from the sizable pistol strapped to his leg, he looked like a ragged security guard in an ill-fitting uniform with a tarnished badge on his chest. Slouched in his chair without authority, or even pretense, he must have been appointed to his position and felt totally out of place. The kind of man put to work doing a job because it was the only job he could do. Manning the port of entry would be easy enough for him because, as Berkeley said, California had hardly ever let anyone in, and only the craziest people ever wanted to leave. Down a squalid hallway, a matching set of enormous steel doors waited. We approached them and felt the vibrating motors whining to life, probably for the first time in years. The piston locks retracted and the door swung open, streaming bright white light into the darkness of the frontier. The cacophony of noise outside ceased in an instant, even the cries of the children. Blinded by the harsh lights, I could barely see anything in the gaping darkness. I tightened the shoulder straps of my backpack, the sum of my entire worth, and set my feet moving. I hoped that all of this would serve some kind of purpose. "Are you ready?" Berkeley asked, the hint of a smile on her lips. Not trusting myself to speak, I nodded once. On the other side of the door was my identity somewhere in the distance. My knees trembled in anticipation. "Let's just walk one step at a time and not look back." She slipped a hand into mine. "Everything we need is right in front of our faces." The rain fell harder as we moved through the door and into the night. The door slammed and darkness consumed us. The night was cool and the rain here smelled of feces and garbage. Through the high fence to our left, the refugee shantytown stretched almost to the horizon. Tens of thousands of dirty, misshapen faces looked out at me. I forced myself to look away, not from pity, but from embarrassment. Some of them screamed and rushed toward the fences. I looked at Berkeley, only to find her kneeling on the ground and digging in her backpack. "What are you doing?" I watched the people pushing forward against the fences. It was only a matter of time before they came after us. A man on the other side of the fence bared his teeth at me in a feral smile. We were going to die 10 steps from civilization. And then Berkeley removed a large black pistol from her backpack. The crowd shrank away. The man disappeared into the throng around him. "Walk as fast as you can," Berkeley said. "I can walk faster." "No, you can't. Just get going." The opulence of California and the starkness of the frontier made no sense to me. One side of the gigantic wall was a sprawling megacity, and the other a ghetto. My stomach churned in anger. People accepted their fates instead of teaching their children to dream. Children like the small, pale faces I'd seen through the fences. Haunted eyes that knew no happiness, like the eyes of the children following the tank in my dream, stared at me. Their plight, endlessly camping out while they waited for their numbers to be called and found worthy of entering the promised land, was all my fault. Blood rushed to my cheeks, and shameful tears mixed with the rain on my face. These were my people. "We'll be okay in about a mile, beyond the lights on the edge of town." Berkeley looked over her shoulder. "Are you okay?" Everything was wrong. Thank you.
A question, perhaps, for Kevin?
What was the line that
So I thought I wrote one of the greatest first lines in history when I wrote, "I remember being born with great hilarity." And my editor came back and said, "That's a POV issue, no."
Okay.
Thank you very much. How's my leg? It was kind of funny. It took me about 14 months to recover. And the minute that my doctor turned me over to the Army's doctoral system, the medical system, he sat with me and said, "You know what's going to happen, right?" And I said, "I've got a pretty good idea." He said, "I bet in 30 days you're going to get a letter that's going to say you're done in the Army." It took 6. So, but I will tell you, wash your hands, and necrotizing fasciitis is nothing to sneeze at. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Life is just sometimes more exciting than fiction. Our next reader is D.L. Orton. D.L. is a girl, and she is here. Yes. And she's going to read from her science fiction novel, Lost Time. If someone took everything you live for, how far would you go to get it back? From award-winning author D.L. Orton comes Book 2 in the Between Two Evils series. Diego arrives in a grim alternate future where the human race ekes out a desperate existence inside aging biodomes. Can he locate the time machine and get back to Isabel, his one true love, in time? And that's not a pun, right? First, he has to figure out how he ended up in a pine tree, buck naked, and carrying a seashell. D.L., please.
Thank you so much for being here tonight. It's really great to have people come and listen and enjoy the books. And thank you to the Book Bar and also to the Colorado Humanities for inviting us all here tonight. I'm going to read from chapter 1 from Lost Time. I lie in the greenish half-light, my lungs on fire, panic forcing out any rational thought. And then I remember where I am, or rather, where I should be. I pound my fists against the translucent coffin lid until I manage to hit the release lever. The cover pops open and frigid air rushes in, smelling of damp earth and evergreens. I gasp for breath, my heart pounding. The last thing I remember is a panicked voice shouting to abort the mission, stop the countdown because, weird, I can't remember, but it definitely wasn't good. I lift my head and a blinding pain stabs me in the temples. I take a ragged breath, wrestling down the urge to vomit, and open my eyes. All my body parts seem to be intact, but my skin is wrinkled like I stayed in the ocean too long. I collapse back into the condensation-covered sarcophagus and notice bright red drops spattered across the internal wall. Now that I think about it, I can feel the cut in my right palm, probably from that damn seashell. I wipe my bloody hand on the towel, the only thing between me and the full Monty, and shiver in the frosty air. It's way too cold for a tropical beach. Where the hell am I? I inhale the cool breeze. It doesn't smell like the beach either. Maybe I landed in the cloud forest or on a high slope of a volcano. At least I didn't arrive underwater. I remain still, listening for the sound of the surf, but hear nothing except a low-pitched groan. The capsule is rocking ever so slightly. I gather my strength and kick the lid off. It bangs and crashes as it falls away from me, taking a long time to hit the ground. I force my nearsighted eyes to focus. Above me, massive coniferous branches fan out, clouds rolling in just beyond the treetops. Houston, we have a problem. I heave myself up high enough to see over the side of the capsule, still shivering in the damp, chilly air. The pod is lodged in the upper boughs of a giant tree, perhaps 30 meters above the blurry forest floor. Christ, I hate heights. I think the tree is an evergreen, but I'm not particularly good with plant identification. Isabel would know. A wave of despair sweeps over me. I try to shake it off and concentrate on the problem at hand. There are definitely not the sort of trees that grow in the tropics, at least not in my time. Now that I think about it, it does look a lot like the Jurassic forest you see in the dinosaur movies. Damn. The soft groan becomes louder, and the pod shifts beneath me, threatening to fall out of the tree. Go, go, go! I rush to get free before the branch gives way, but my muscles aren't working properly. On the third try, I manage to wrench myself out, but as I drag my body over the edge of the pod, my towel slips off and disappears into the branches below. Don't look down. I put my bare feet on the prickly bark, grab onto an upper branch, and pull myself free, my eyes pinned on my shriveled privates. Whose idea was it to send me in a towel anyway? There's a cold breeze, and the clouds are getting heavier by the minute. If I don't get down before it gets dark, don't go there. I shuffle sideways along the branch until I reach the relative safety of the trunk. My whole body is shaking, and I feel weak. Something moves at the edge of my vision, and when I look more carefully, the trees seem to be crawling with giant bugs. I blink a couple of times and realize that they're not insects, but blackbirds, hundreds of them, perched in the trees around me. I look out into the forest again, dread creeping up my exposed back. No tyrannosaurs or brachiosaurs, nothing but green, and all those birds. At least birds descended from dinosaurs, so I probably don't need to worry about being eaten by a velociraptor. But I can't remember if there were ever any giant man-eating dodos. With my luck, there probably were. I shut my eyes for a second, pushing down vertigo, and then start climbing down. The tree is huge, and it's slow going. I have to shinny sideways around the trunk to find footholds and hand grips, bumping and scraping my bare front side against the sharp branches and rough bark. Note to self, the hitchhiker's guide was wrong. When time traveling, shine a towel and bring boxers. As I move painstakingly down the tree, I get an uncomfortable feeling, like something sinister is watching me. Why are there so damn many birds? Naked, cut up, and shivering, I continue downwards, wondering how the hell I ended up in Alfred Hitchcock's nightmare. But before I manage to climb down even 3 branches, I hear a loud snap and look up to see the black explosion of wings. A moment later, the translucent coffin comes bouncing down the tree branches like a bobsled on a spiral staircase, heading straight for me. I force myself to look down, trying to gauge if I'm low enough to jump, and notice a flash of red moving through the trees. There's an astronaut straight out of 2001: A Space Odyssey down in the forest. What the? Diego! I whip my head around at the sound of my name, looking for the source of the voice. It takes me a second to spot the woman standing at the base of the tree. Isabel? A damp towel drops over my head, covering my eyes, and I lose my balance. Bam! I grab for the towel, but my foot slips, pitching me backward. For a sickening instant, I watch the world slip by in slow motion. And then my head strikes a branch. Pain shoots through my neck and spine, and I tumble sideways into nothingness.
Question for DL. Why DL? Why not an A?
That's kind of a tough one. I had done some reading when I was trying to decide what I wanted to put down as an author, whether I wanted to use a pseudonym, a pen name, or my real name. And I found some information on the fact that, and I'm kind of sorry to say this, but that books written by men are more highly evaluated and more better received than books written by women. And that's kind of a sad commentary on society. But rather than reveal from the very beginning that I was a woman, I chose to just give my initials and then let the reader decide.
Any other questions for DL?
Thank you.
I was afraid that was the reason, DL. That's a sad story. In the worlds that you create, is it not true? Is it over? Is there equity in your worlds that you create in the future?
Yes, I have a female protagonist.
Thank you, ma'am. All right, that's fixed. Next, Carrie Vaughn will read from Amaryllis and Other Stories. Carrie is best known for her New York Times best-selling series of novels about a werewolf named Kitty, who hosts a talk radio show for the supernaturally disadvantaged. She's written several other contemporary fantasy and young adult novels, as well as upwards of 80 short stories. An Air Force brat, she put down roots in Boulder. Carrie, where are you? Good. And shall I read the description as well? Okay. Amaryllis and Other Stories collects 18 of Vaughn's best-selling, award-winning short stories. This collection contains alien encounters, classic fantasy creatures, strange magic, historical milieus, stories with heart of people making their ways in the world the best they can, however strange and hostile those worlds might be. Like we all are in these strange times. It includes, what's WSFA?
The Washington Science Fiction Association.
The Washington Science Fiction Association, is that Washington State?
Washington, D.C.
DC? The DC, okay. Science Fiction Association Small Press Award-winning story Amaryllis, about a post-catastrophe future community struggling to live in balance with the environment and each other. Carrie.
Thank you for the introduction, and thank you all for being here. So as you might have gathered, I love short stories. I always take time out to write more short stories, and I thought I would just start with the first one here. This is called The Best We Can. In the end, the discovery of evidence of extraterrestrial life, and not just life but intelligence, got hopelessly mucked up because no one wanted to take responsibility for confirming the findings, and no one could decide who ultimately had the authority, the obligation to do so. We submitted the paper, but peer review held it up for a year. News leaked, NASA announced one of their press conferences, but the press conference ended up being an announcement about a future announcement, which never actually happened, and the reporters made a joke of it, another case of Antarctic meteorites or cold fusion. We went around with our mouths shut, waiting for an official announcement while ulcers devoured our guts. So I wrote a press release. I had Marsh at JPL's Comet Group and Salvayan at Columbia vet it for me and released it under the auspices of the JPL Near Earth Object Program. We could at least start talking about it instead of arguing about whether we were ready to start talking about it. I didn't know what would happen next. I did it in the spirit of scientific outreach, naturally. The release included the now famous blurry photo that started the whole thing. I had an original print of that photo, of UO1, Unidentified Object 1, because technically it wasn't flying, and I was being optimistic that this would be the first of more than one, framed and hanging on the wall over my desk, a stark focal point in my chronically cluttered office. Out of the thousands of asteroids we tracked and photographed, this one caught my eye, because it was symmetrical and had a higher than normal albedo. It flashed even, like a mirror. Asteroids aren't symmetrical and aren't very reflective. But if it wasn't an asteroid, we turned as many telescopes on it as we could, tried to get time on Hubble, and failed because it sounded ridiculous. Why waste time looking at something inside the orbit of Jupiter? We did get Arecibo on it. We got pictures from multiple sources, studied them for weeks, until we couldn't argue with them any longer. No one wanted to say it because it was crazy. Just thinking it would get you sacked. And I got so frustrated with the whole group sitting there in the conference room after hours on a Friday afternoon, staring at each other with wide eyes and dropped jaws, and no one saying anything. I said it. It's not natural, and it's not ours. UO1 was approximately 250 meters long, with a fan shape at one end, blurred at the other, as if covered with projections too fine to show up at that resolution. The rest was perfectly straight, a thin stalk holding together blossom and roots, the lines rigid and artificial. The fan shape might be a ram scoop. Angie came up with that idea, and the conjecture stuck, no matter how much I reminded people that we couldn't decide anything about what it was or what it meant. Not until we knew more. We, the scientific community, astronomers, philosophers, writers, all of humanity, had spent a lot of time thinking about what would happen if we found definitive proof that intelligent life existed elsewhere in the universe. All of the scenarios involve those other intelligences talking to us, reaching out to us, sending a message we would have to decipher, would be eager to decipher. Hell, we sure wouldn't be able to talk to them, not stuck on our own collection of rocks like we were. Whether people thought we'd be overrun with sadistic tripods or be invited to join a greater benevolent galactic society, that was always the assumption. We'd know they were there because they'd talk to us. When that didn't happen, it was like no one knew what to do next. No one had thought about what would happen if we just found a thing that happened to be drifting a few million miles out from the moon. It didn't talk, not so much as a blinking light. The radiation we detected from it was reflected. Whatever propulsion had driven it through space had long since stopped, and inertia carried it now. No one knew how to respond to it. The news that was supposed to change the course of human history didn't. We wouldn't know any more about it until we looked at it up close, until we brought it here, brought it home, and that was where it all fell apart. I presented the initial findings at the International Astronomical Union annual meeting. My department gathered the data, but we couldn't do anything about implementation. No one group could implement anything because, of course, the first argument was about whom the thing belonged to. I nearly resigned. Everyone wanted a piece of it, including various governments and the United Nations, and we had to humor that debate because nothing could get done without funding. The greatest discovery in all of human history, and funding held it hostage. Several corporations, including the producers of a popular energy drink, threatened to mount their own expeditions in order to establish naming and publicity rights, until the U.S. Departments of Energy, Transportation, and Defense issued joint restrictions on privately funded extraorbital spaceflight, which caused its own massive furor. Meanwhile, we and the various other groups working on the project tracked UO1 as it appeared to establish an elliptical solar orbit that would take it out to the orbit of Saturn and back on a 20-year cycle. We waited. We developed plans, which were presented and rejected. We took better and better pictures, which revealed enough detail to see struts holding up what did indeed appear to be the surface of a ram scoop. It did not, everyone slowly began to agree, appear to be inhabited. The data on it never fluctuated. No signals emanated from it. It was metal, it was solid, it was inert. We published papers and appeared on cable documentaries. We gritted our teeth while websites went up claiming that the thing was a weapon, and a survivalist movement developed in response. Since it was indistinguishable from all the existing survivalist movements, no one really noticed. And we waited.
Okay, I have a question while you think of yours. What is the name of your werewolf series?
Kitty. It's the Kitty Norville series. The first one is Kitty in the Midnight Hour.
Kitty Norville. And you were born a science fiction writer. I assume from your bio that you came out with a pen from the future to write about science fiction. How did you
That's not far off. My parents were science fiction readers, so I grew up Yeah, I grew up reading what was on my parents' bookshelf, which of course was all of the Heinlein and the Asimov and the Arthur Clarke and the Ursula Le Guin and the Anne McCaffrey, you know, all of the great classics. And it was kind of a shock to me when I realized that not everybody reads science fiction, because that was kind of the only thing that was in the house, along with the Star Trek reruns. And I think I'm the perfect age because I got to grow up, you know, at a very formative time with the original Battlestar Galactica and Buck Rogers and Star Wars and Wonder Woman and kind of that golden age of really cheesy late 70s television that was just so perfect, and we're still trying to get back to that. So yeah, not far off, really.
But you do seem to have a deep understanding of bureaucracy also.
Yeah, that part about being an Air Force brat?
Yeah. Question.
So I know one of the stories in Amaryllis is, did you spin off Bannerless into the novel that's coming out, or is it just related?
Yeah, I spun it off. It's the same main character. So my next novel coming out in July is called Bannerless, and it's a post-apocalyptic murder mystery, because I have to write a little bit of everything, apparently. And the main character of that is in one of the stories in Amaryllis. So.
Can you tell us a bit about your latest book, Martians Abroad, and how it relates maybe to your reading when you were...
Oh, yeah. So the novel that just came out in January is called Martians Abroad, and it's very much kind of a classic science fiction space adventure. You may be aware of what people call the Heinlein Juveniles, or the books that Robert Heinlein wrote for younger readers that are about kids in space having adventures with aliens and spaceships and have space world travel, and it's all awesome. And I wanted to write my own version of one of those books, kind of incorporating everything we've learned about the planets and astronomy since the 50s when Heinlein was writing, because we've learned a whole heck of a lot. I can't make up things about Mars now. Like all of my favorite writers, they just basically made up Mars because we didn't know. And we have entire maps of Mars now. Every single thing is named, so I couldn't just decide, aha, that little piece there is going to be named this. I couldn't do that because it actually has a name, and people will check, and people will know if I get it wrong. So I don't know if that makes it easier or harder to write about Mars now, because I have to actually look it up. I can't just make it up.
Anyone else? And now we're going to have a half-hour conversation about fiction writers' responsibility to tell the truth and the problems of modern-day journalism. Would everyone like to get another drink? Carrie, I have a form for you to fill out as a punishment. Thank you. Now we're going to move into mystery. In the mystery category, Margaret, whose name I don't know how to pronounce, I'm going to look for Margaret. Margaret. Is it Mizushima?
You're close enough.
Mizushima.
Mizushima.
I have to do this for the boss who's going to read it when we win, right? Shima.
Mizu.
Okay, well, Mizushima.
Right?
Correct? Where's the accent?
All over.
All over?
Each syllable, well, Mizushima.
Okay, thank you. And she'll read from her mystery Stalking Ground. The author of the Timber Creek K9 mysteries, I've read about these before, published by Crooked Lane Books. Margaret has a background in speech pathology and business management, which we need to talk about how those two fit together, because I think they do for you somehow. Her short story, Hey Hook, was selected to appear in the 2014 Rocky Mountain Fiction Writers Anthology, Crossing Colfax. She lives on a small farm in Colorado with her veterinarian husband. When Deputy Ken Brody's sweetheart goes missing in the mountains outside Timber Creek, Maddie Cobb and her K9 partner Robo are called to search. But it's mid-October and a dark snowstorm is brewing over the high country, and they're already too late. By the time they find her body, the storm is broken and the snow is coming down hard. Should I keep on going with this? Is a good setup? I don't want to give away too much. While Brody hikes down to bring back the forensics team and veterinarian What a coincidence. Your husband. Cole Walker gathers supplies to protect them from the storm. Maddie and Robo are alone, guarding the gravesite overnight in the dead of the early winter. Shall I stop there?
That's fine.
Thank you. All right.
Thank you to our hosts for organizing this tonight. It's a wonderful opportunity. Before I begin, I have some exciting news to share. The Timber Creek Canine Mysteries are going international. Just found out. Thank you. They'll be released in the UK in May, and then later this year in France. So we're very excited. Thank you. Now getting back to business. The excerpt I'll read tonight is from Chapter 1. Protagonists, Deputy Maddie Cobb and her canine partner Robo, are in Denver at an industrial park. Their mission, to catch a gang of jewel thieves. Officers going by code names Red, Green, and Blue are there as backup. Shots have been fired. Robo has tracked one fugitive into a warehouse, and it's Maddie's job to go after him. Nose to the ground, Robo entered with Maddie immediately behind him. Static erupted on her headset. "Halt," Officer Red shouted, and then she heard the sounds of his breath as he started to run. "Robo, wait." She paused and listened, her eyes scanning the warehouse she'd just entered. The place was filled with rows of containers stacked from floor to ceiling, and a skid steer loader was parked close by. Narrow alleyways branched off between the rows. She hurried to take cover behind the skid steer. Officer Red's voice came into her headset, loud and breathless. "K9-1, we've apprehended and neutralized 2 suspects. Do you copy?" "Affirmative. Both suspects are unarmed. Neither one is the shooter. I repeat, we do not have the shooter." "Copy that," Maddie said. "How many exits?" 2. Your entry and one at the north end. Green and Blue, guard both exits. Red, come inside to back us up. Can you make that happen?" "Affirmative. Hold for 1 minute. Over." With her heart pumping more energy than she knew what to do with, Maddie waited until she saw Officer Red appear in the doorway. He signaled that he'd spotted her. Maddie lifted the face guard on her helmet and shouted toward the back of the warehouse. "You are surrounded by police. We have blocked all exits. You cannot escape. Surrender at once." Silence. Pulling her face guard back into place, she directed Robo toward the scent trail. "Robo, search." As they moved forward, she signaled Officer Red to follow. Robo led Maddie into a narrow passage between the rows of boxes, while Red covered her back. A wave of claustrophobia enveloped her as the boxes towered above, threatening to fall and crush. She focused on Robo's back, watching the hair bristle and rise on the back of his neck. She scanned up and down the passageway, looking for signs of an ambush. They reached an intersection, and Robo turned right. Maddie made the turn almost at the same time he did, her weapon held ready to shoot. Gliding down the narrow passage with his nose to the ground, Robo picked up speed. Maddie stayed close. They came into an open space. Maddie spied the fugitive, moving away from her at an ungainly pace, his shape bulky in the dim light. "Robo, take him." With lethal silence, Robo darted after the man. He leapt, striking the runner's right arm. The gun hit the floor and skidded, scraping across the concrete. Robo's growls filled the space as he used his weight to pull the man to his knees. Maddie approached cautiously, signaling Officer Red to pick up the gun. "Out!" the fugitive cried. "Robo, out!" Robo turned more vicious.
growling and giving the man's arm a fierce shake. Maddie smiled. Robo's tail was waving. This is what he lives for. A full suit of bike gear with extra padding around the arms and hands protected the fugitive from her dog's terrible jaws. She let Robo have his fun for a few more seconds before she decided to call a halt. Robo, out. Maddie used a loud, firm voice to instruct him. Robo broke away at once and backed up a step, tail still waving. Guard. Her dog crouched into guard position, mouth open, teeth exposed, jowls dripping. Have you had enough, Sergeant Madsen? Maddie asked the fugitive. The large man in the bite suit stayed on his knees and raised his hands in surrender. Maddie saw his smile beaming from behind the protective gear he wore on his face. You can call him off now, Deputy. I give up. Robo, down. Robo dropped into a down position, but his posture said that he was ready to go again any time. Madsen, Robo's trainer, pulled off his helmet. Sweat glistened on his shiny bald head and dripped down to roll across the tattoo of a policeman's badge above his right ear. He grinned up at Maddie. Well, he's surely your dog now, Deputy. No doubt about it. Maddie smiled back. He's every bit the dog you made him, Sergeant. No one could ask for a better partner. Congratulations. Now go play with your dog, and we'll debrief here in a few minutes, after I get the hell out of this goddamn bite suit.
Where did you come up with the idea for the series?
Where did I come up with the idea for the series? From my husband. He came home for lunch one day, and he'd been with a client who trained protection dogs and patrol dogs. The client told him that he was transferring a dog to the Forest Service because the rangers needed dogs for narcotics detection in the national parks here in Colorado. And so the idea was born right there at our kitchen table when we talked. We decided that Timber Creek would be located right near the National Forest, and that Timber Creek would have bought a narcotics protection dog to combat drug traffic through their town. He's waving.
You're waiting.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. All right. The next, another finalist in the mystery category is Barbara Nicholas, who will read from her mystery, Blood on the Tracks. An English degree and a sense of adventure led Barbara to work as a technical writer, raptor rehabilitator, astronomy instructor, sword fighter, piano teacher, and journalist. Now, as an award-winning author, she spends her free time snowshoeing and enjoying the Rockies, as we all do in our free time, I hope. A young woman is found brutally murdered, and the main suspect is the victim's fiancé, a hideously scarred Iraq War vet known as the Burned Man. But Railroad Police Special Agent Sidney Rose Parnell, brought in by the Denver Major Crimes Unit to help investigate, can't shake the feeling that larger forces are behind this apparent crime of passion. In the depths of an icy winter, Parnell and her canine partner, Clyde, were our selectors dog lovers? It's all about the quality, I know it is. Both haunted by their time in Iraq, descend into the underground world of a savage gang of rail riders. If I keep reading, do I give away too much for your setup? Right, fine right there? Okay,
Oh, no.
keep going. There they uncover a wide-reaching conspiracy and a series of shocking crimes. Crimes that threaten everything Parnell holds dear. As the search for the truth puts her directly in the path of the killer, Parnell must struggle with the deadly question. It's such a great question. Can she fight monsters without becoming one herself? Thank you.
Thank you, Colorado Humanities and Book Bar, and thank you everybody for being here. It's like book lovers go. So honestly, the setup for this scene is going to take longer than the scene, I think. So my situation leading up to where I'm going to read is a suspected murderer has hopped on board a freight train rolling north out of Denver, and the sheriff has stopped the train, they've searched it, and my protagonist, Sydney Parnell, and her canine partner, Clyde, go dogs, have been helping in the search. And then they get word that they think they've seen the suspect in Fort Collins, and there's a bad winter storm coming on, so they call out the search, and Sydney gives the engineer the go-ahead to start the train up again and get it rolling. And then just as the train is picking up speed, Sydney's canine partner acts like he's caught a scent. Now, Clyde is a military working dog, or he was a military working dog, and they don't quit when the going gets tough. They don't care about moving trains, they don't care about storms, all they care about is getting their man. So even as Sydney orders him back, he darts under the moving train and disappears from view. I dropped to the ground and peered under the train. Clyde had vanished into the snowfall on the other side of the tracks, chasing whatever scent he'd caught. I sprang to my feet, narrowing my eyes against the pelting snow. I zeroed in on a landmark as it flashed into and out of sight between the cars. A twisted pinyon pine bent over a shattered pile of sandstone. I turned and sprinted south, running against the direction of the cars. Clyde was my partner. As long as we were separated by a moving train, his life was at risk. No time to tell the engineer to stop. If Clyde decided to come back, he could be crushed many times over before the train settled. Learning to catch out isn't part of a railway cop's education. All we hear in training is to stay clear of a moving train. Want to survive until your retirement? Then do not get in an argument with 14,000 tons of steel. Handle whatever needs handling after the train stops. The instructors never said what to do if your partner was trapped on the other side of that rolling steel. The wheels rat-a-tatted on the rails. 4 cars down, a hopper glowered in the dreary late afternoon gloom, her platform sitting empty on the north end. I estimated the engine speed at 12 miles an hour. Another 2 minutes, the train would be going more than 18 miles an hour. Jumping then would be suicide. I put on more speed, slid sideways on the first fall of snow, and caught myself. 5 trainees in my class gave catching out a try. And if you're not familiar with the term catching out, it simply means jumping on a moving freight train. So 5 trainees in my class gave catching out a try, got drunk, and tried to hop a southbound freight. Results were mixed. A broken wrist, 2 broken ankles, and a sheared off thumb. Those still in one piece spent the next 2 weeks running calisthenics and watching endless safety videos. The guy who lost his thumb took a job as a mall cop. Next to me, the train filled the horizon, looming like a mountain against the sky. I kept my eyes on the platform and on the dark cubby above it. In the far distance, Clyde barked, a single sharp sound. Hurry up, he was telling me. I've got something. I put on a final burst of speed. I was my father's daughter, and unlike those cadets, I knew exactly what to do. Coming abreast of the hopper, I thrust my foot into the metal stirrup, grabbed hold of the ladder like a penitent reaching for God, and swung onto the platform. The motion of the train slammed me onto a steel floor slick with snow. I went skittering across. The skin split on my cheek and peeled off my palms. My brain bounced in my skull with a sickening jolt. I scrabbled for a hold on the icy floor. My feet shot out over the other side, and I felt the suck of gravity in the grinding tug of the wheels. I reached for the ladder on the far side, was jerked away with the train's motion, and grabbed again. Then, like grace descending, my body reached the tempo of the train. My hands closed on the ladder, and the world quieted. I hauled myself to a crouch and looked at the ground hurtling by. A landscape that had seemed harmless when walking was now a minefield of sharp ballast, thorny acacias, and fields of cactus. I saw my landmark, the pinyon pine and limestone scree, and leapt. The earth slammed into me and I rolled along the ground with the momentum of the train, pitched into a stop against an acacia bush. I lay still, momentarily stunned, blinking up into the leaden sky. Snow burned my wounded face. Then Clyde was on top of me, tail wagging fiercely, sweeping the snow from my skin with his tongue. I rose to my knees and threw my arms around him, burying my throbbing face in his fur, heedless of the pain, my pulse thundering in my ears from adrenaline and the fear of losing him. Clyde tolerated my embrace for a moment or two before he wiggled free and danced around me, sniffing my jacket pockets for his Kong still on the game. So I brought my little show and tell. As Margaret well knows, this is a Kong, and this is what they train military working dogs with and canine dogs with, and those dogs will do anything for this. I stood and grabbed his lead and held it as tightly as I could with my injured hands. Game over, boy. I don't know what you think you found, but it's time to get the hell home. But Clyde trotted away from me, moving west as far as his lead would allow. He looked back at me over his shoulder, ears cocked and tail jaunty. Game on, he seemed to be saying. Are we gonna get this guy or what? Thank you. Oh, you guys are too easy.
Will there be more Sydney Rose Parnell?
He's a plant. I just finished developmental edits on Dead Stop, and it'll be out next October.
Thank you. So I'm curious, I just started reading it. I try to read as many of the finalists as I can. And so I'm curious, did you have to research to sort of know the language of the culture? And did you have to jump on any trains?
So the question was, did I have to do research to learn about the hobo culture, and did I jump on any moving freight trains? So I'm here, so no on the second part. Please don't ever do that. Actually, that's a serious safety concern, and my kids went up to school at CSU, and kids try and jump the train as it's moving through town, and a girl lost her leg. It's really serious stuff. But researching the hobo culture was absolutely fun. I didn't know there were modern day hobos until I read a book called Hobo by Eddie Joe Cotton. And so it's a very interesting subculture of the whole homeless culture.
What is this thing?
This is a Kong. So when you throw it, it bounces in all different directions, and you know, for some reason, these dogs, these German Shepherds and Belgian Malinois mainly, think that this is the best thing since sliced, well, way better than sliced bread. And so this is the standard treat that they're given when they perform correctly.
Should they eat it?
No, it's just a rubber ball.
Just
They chew on it. Yeah, so you can't, you know, if your dog's like a poodle, I love poodles, but you can put a treat in here and then they can work at trying to pull that out. But I think for the military working dogs, I think it's just chasing it down. Thank you.
Emily Littlejohn, author of Inherit the Bones, is the other finalist in the mystery category, and she's not here, right? And her book is not. Her book might be here. You're not getting an immediate answer. Okay. Our next readings tonight are in the thriller category, which my tween grandchildren are reading. First is Larry Animal Garner, who I hope is him. Yes. And because he's in character. He's reading from his thriller DED Reckoning, Vengeance Takes a Road Trip, the second installment in the Hammer series of action-adventure novels. Larry is a Colorado native, U.S. Navy veteran, and lifelong biker and hot rodder. And we need to talk, because I've got some of those in my world. His first novel, DED Dead, was a finalist in the 2013 Colorado Book Awards. When he read, that was in the press club, wasn't it, Larry? When he read that, I was scared. Garner and his wife, Marcia, are very smart, though. They live in the San Luis Valley, which I love. Shall I do the setup for it?
Sure, go ahead.
Okay. Protagonist Eric Hammer Thorson finds himself in southern Colorado, as he flees, and this is an interesting introduction to a character, the carnage he orchestrated in Alabama. Looking for his great uncle, Hammer instead finds himself heir to the old man's property next to the Rio Grande. As he gets settled in, he finds the same sort of people he made a point of obliterating in the South. Meth cooks and dealers, combined with those who abuse and take advantage of young women, are running rampant in this beautiful mountain valley. And once again, Hammer feels the need to stop them. Along with an old friend and some new acquaintances, Hammer devises a plan of attack to deal with the evil he has uncovered. There is lots of action, plenty of snarky humor, and sexy shenanigans as Hammer and his crew of meth busters take on those who prey on their neighbors and family. Very please. Thank you.
A lot of work. Thank you. Eric Thorson, known as Hammer by friends and foes alike, is in southern Colorado after fleeing the fallout of his war on methamphetamine dealers in the South, as was brought up in the great introduction there. He finds that his great uncle is gone. One of his best childhood friends is cooking and selling methamphetamine, which is not a good thing in his book. And one of his friends shows up looking for his nephew who disappeared on his way to Durango for a motorcycle rally. They decide they're going to do something about the meth cooks and the people that are doing the bad things with young women. And this scene, Hammer is telling his new girlfriend, Patsy, exactly what she's gotten herself into. Patsy had been at first interested, even amused at the story of how I went from little Eric Thorson to Hammer, breaker of heads. As the tale progressed through my relatively harmless antics during my Navy days into my induction into the Pissed and Broke Motorcycle Club, her demeanor slowly began to change. She keeps shifting her weight, finding something to look at other than my eyes. By the time I get to some of the more lurid details of the events in Alabama, Patsy's heard enough. Eric, stop. She's looking at me as one would a child who has pulled the head off of her pet rabbit. You can't possibly expect me to believe you actually did all those things. And to think you would try to make me believe that Travis would be involved in the same acts is shameful. I thought she was stopping me because she'd heard enough and wanted to put as much room between us as possible. But the fact is, she's angry. She believes I'm spinning tales, making the whole thing up. Everything I've told you is true, Patsy. As a matter of fact, I even left out some of the more damning details in order to come across as not quite such an evil asshole. Travis told me you needed to know what you gotten yourself into, and I agreed. I'm a bad person. A man who doesn't know any way to stop someone or something I despise without going full-tilt psycho. I don't trust the law, the courts, or anyone else to do the job as thoroughly and as quickly as I can. I came here thinking I'd put that behind me, but I was kidding myself. If I thought I was going to lead a normal, quiet life, there would have been no need for a cache of weapons under the bed in my van. There would have been no reason to constantly have a weapon nearby. The truth is that I'm always watching for a reason to fuck someone up if they do something I don't approve of. Me, the great judge and executioner. On top of that, there are a lot of people who are pretty pissed off at me and would love to see me dead or in prison. Patsy's just sitting there on the couch in the office. If you didn't know better, you'd think she was watching a horror flick on the television. Pretty Patsy in her jeans and Bronco shirt looks like she's afraid to breathe. So Bobby Newsom murdered his grandfather and stole all of his belongings? Kill him. Now he's making and selling meth? Kill him and everyone helping him. He's selling the damn poison to a truly evil bastard and his bunch of assholes in New Mexico who sell it and other drugs around the four corners and in between murder people just for fun? Fucking A, let's murder every one of the sons of bitches and blow up everything related to them. What about the rumor that his crew is also kidnapping, raping, and killing women from the area I've made my new home? Let's kill him, them, and everyone that looks like them. While we're at it, we should blow up everything that even has the least connection to them. That should show one's thinking of taking their place, that whatever happens when you enslave people to your product, take their dignity and everything else they own, then kill the ones who piss you off. Now I really have her attention. She may make a break for the shotgun in the bedroom at any time. But does it actually work, I ask? Will erasing that prick Bobby Newsom and the Bradford brothers make anything better in the long run? At the mention of her tormentors, Patsy flinches a little. Maybe, maybe not. Maybe I'll never know. The one thing I do know is that I won't stop unless someone stops me. If someone puts a bullet in my head, I'll definitely deserve it. Another flinch. I've done things that deserve that fate. If I get snagged by the law and thrown in a cage, I'll deserve that too. I've committed so many felonies, someone would need a ledger to keep track of them. Patsy's silent, giving rise to the possibility she's afraid to speak. But do I stop? Of course not. These things need said, and she needs to hear them. So now you know who Eric Thorson, no, Hammer, is. I may change someday, but betting on it would be foolish. I may lose my shit tomorrow and run into a burning building with a pocket full of dynamite to do what I feel needs to be done. Hell, just listening to me makes me think I'm crazy. I sure as hell won't blame you when you grab your stuff and run away screaming. If you feel the need to call the cops, I'll sit here and wait for them, and I'll go peacefully. That might be the best thing that ever happened to the San Luis Valley. Christ, what started out as a purely informational gab session has evolved into a madman's manifesto. I really am crazy. I've never just sat down and thought all that through at one time before, but when you start at one end and follow the threads through the entire story, the conclusion is plain. I'm a fucking mess. Actually, I'm a damn dangerous fucking mess. I can't tell if Patsy is stunned, scared, or just disgusted. She gets up off the leather couch she's been sitting on for the last couple of hours and walks out of the office without saying a word. Well, that's that. I realize I have stronger feelings for this woman than anyone I've ever known. For whatever reason, I gave myself up to save another person from suffering the fallout of my behavior. I'd rather have Patsy safe from further damage than continue to pull her into the maelstrom that is coming. If that means I go to the joint, so be it. But I was lying. I won't sit here and wait for the cops. I need to at least find the Bradfords and remove them from the list of things that threaten her. The thought of leaving that prick Bobby Newsom alive chafes at me. But a man needs priorities. Mine is Patsy, the woman I met 15 years too late.
I know you're probably scared. Go ahead. I'm scared. I'm also like, oh, you.
Well, I picked a spot that didn't have any really graphic violence. Or any really heavy-duty sex. I mean,
I know you
I took it kind of easy on you.
Really, no question. So,
Do you find yourself persecuted for wearing bolos?
As a matter of fact, that's happened. All right. Thank you all for being here.
all right. Two more. Samuel Marquis. Yes? Pronounced Marquis? No. Samuel. Marquis. Oh, poor Spanish. Marquis. Who will read from his thriller, The Coalition. A best-selling, award-winning suspense author, Samuel works by day as a BP hydrogeologist, which I want to know what that is, with an environmental firm in Boulder. Okay, here's the setup. In The Coalition, From the 50th floor of an office building in Denver, Colorado, a long-range assassin calmly watches a procession of black Lincolns. And when the motorcade pulls to the curb in Civic Center Plaza, isn't it fun reading books that to have places that you know? I just think that's so great. This isn't fun though. A prominent leader steps from one of the vehicles and takes the stage to make an important speech. Moments later, a loud boom echoes through the plaza, and the man slumps to the platform like a stringless marionette. Also a good phrase, stringless marionette. The mysterious sniper, whose very existence is unknown to the international law enforcement community, has just assassinated U.S. President-elect William Ambrose Kiger? Keeger. See, can't read, but Samuel can, and will come up here and read from the coalition. All you writers who have received this form is just because Bess is recording this tonight. Come on up, Samuel. Come on. And we're going to post it on our website so that other people can get a taste if they weren't lucky enough to be here. So that's all that is. And please give the forms back, if you would, to Bess and me. Thank you, Sam.
So she just spoiled my what I was going to talk about here, the whole opening. So that was it. No. So luckily that was what I chose, but luckily it's different enough. I wanted to start out with, when I started my writing career, when I had my sort of breakout about a year and a half ago, I had a book launch party, and I had these nice poster boards made up, and I was like, made them up, and I was like, am I ever going to be able to use these things again? So I want to thank the Colorado Book Foundation and for selecting me for this award, because now I get to reuse. This is my part. And I want you to notice one thing that's kind of funny about this. I got a little blurb. I was lucky enough to get a little blurb from James Patterson. It says, a lot of good action and suspense. I wanted to let you know that this is the longest sentence that James Patterson's ever written. Because, as you all know, if you've ever read him, he's the most succinct author on the planet. So, I get to read this again, and then I get to make fun of James Patterson. How fun is that? You can't do that every day, right? So, it's not easy when you're doing a thriller to pick a scene, because I didn't really know what to expect in coming here. So I wasn't sure if there might be kids present, or we're sensitive to certain things. So my book is a political assassination thriller that takes place in Denver, and so I interviewed, spent 8 hours at the FBI interviewing the FBI downtown to sort of build the novel. And so it is very close to us if you grew up in Denver or familiar with Denver. So I'll just start out, and there is a tiny bit of repeat from what she had. The motorcade swept in from the west. 5 equally spaced Lincolns, each the same. Sleek, jet black, with U.S. government tags, bulletproof windows, and tinted glass to conceal the identity of the occupants. The caravan stretched nearly a full city block as it rolled up Colfax Avenue. Police escort fore and aft. In the third vehicle sat an august-looking gentleman donning an English-cut double-breasted suit. He was scheduled to give a speech in the Civic Center Plaza in 16 minutes. On the 50th floor of the Union Plaza building, from behind a reflective office window, a woman watched the procession with detached interest through high-poled Leopold binoculars. The woman was unusual in several respects. A pair of perforated black leather gloves encased her nimble hands. She wore a special disguise and was fluent in 6 different languages. And concealed in the hardcover carrying case at her feet was a Barrett M82A1 50 caliber semi-automatic scoped rifle, broken down into 5 separate components. She was intimately familiar with the lethal weapon. For more than a decade now, it had been her closest companion. The woman was of Italian heritage, but with her clever disguise, polyglot mastery of languages, and surgical alteration of her Roman nose, it was impossible to tell. Her given name was Angela Ferrara. but years ago she had forsaken her real name for aliases. Her current alias was Skylar, no last name. She also had a nom de guerre, Diego Gomez, a fictitious name created by her control agent. The invented Spanish assassin remained a mystery, a phantom of the files in the hands of the international law enforcement community. For her own security, Skylar was determined to keep it that way. She continued following the black motorcade through her binoculars. The motorcade turned right onto Bannock Street and pulled to the curb behind the speakers platform in the western end of the plaza. To the distant west, beyond the jungle of glass and steel of downtown Denver, the snow-shawled Rockies stretched toward an unseasonably warm mid-November sun and periwinkle sky. Skylar had spent the last few hours periodically gazing at the shimmering mountains, her eyes drawn like a magnet. They brought back pleasant memories, childhood memories of family vacations, hiking and skiing in the Dolomites of her native Italy. Before her life had changed drastically. The car doors opened. The man and his handlers emerged from the Lincolns. Skylar took in the chiseled face captured in countless photo ops, noting the famous boyish smile as the man shook hands with party loyalists. 5 days after winning the presidential election, William Ambrose Keeger was returning to the home state of his vice presidential running mate, Catherine Fowler, to pay tribute to the people of Colorado who had played a pivotal role in his capturing the White House. Fowler, the two-term red meat senator from the Centennial State, was in Colorado Springs today, giving a similar speech in support of the president-elect. But Skylar didn't care. She was here to do a job. In fact, she was here to kill, just as Don Scarpello and Alberto, the heartless bastards, had long ago killed her inside. The crowd roared as Keeger took the stage. Even through the glass, Skylar could hear the sound filtering up. Somehow, the whole scene seemed oddly incongruous to her. Here she was about to wreak bloody death and mayhem in the plaza, and the damn place looked like a carnival. The shimmery festiveness of the crowd packed onto the grassy lawn. The multicolored richness of the banners and American flags ruffling the crisp autumn breeze. The hundreds of balloons arranged like clusters of grapes festooning the platform. Everything seemed out of place, like stage props brought to the wrong movie set. When the president-elect launched into a speech Skylar knew would take between 12 and 14 minutes, she took time to study the counter-sniper positions once more through her binoculars. Teams were posted on the 7 tallest buildings surrounding the plaza: the State Capitol, Judicial Building, Public Library, Art Museum, Denver Tribune Tower, Petroleum Building, and Adams Mark Hotel. Because of their close proximity, the counter-sniper and spotter on the 20-story hotel posed the gravest risk. She felt the tension pick up inside her. Though the professional's professional, she was not so brazen as to be overconfident. This was the biggest assignment of her career, and getting out alive was going to be precarious, despite her meticulous planning. She had taken out oligarchs, powerful businessmen, high-ranking government officials, most wanted terrorists, and rival snipers, a total of 14 individuals in Europe, the US, Canada, and South America. But never before had she faced such a sizable security detail. All of Skylar's targets in the past had been men. She hated men. How the hell could she not after what Don Scarpello and Alberto had done to her, and wanted to kill them all? But she had never harmed a woman or child, accidentally or otherwise, nor would she ever kill a man in front of his family, which was why she was relieved that Keeger's wife and 3 children were not present for this political event. If they had made an unexpected appearance, she would have had to scrub the mission. She went through her mental checklist. Only one last thing remained. She took out her rosary and kneeled down to pray. Closing her eyes, she pressed her hands together into a steeple and brought the string of crimson beads to her lips with her forefingers. There was no need to ask for forgiveness for what she was about to do. She knew that it was unforgivable, that righteousness was little more than a stepping stone to hypocrisy. Nor did she plead for a keen eye or a steady hold, or pray for a clean escape. Instead, she surrendered herself unconditionally before God in all her imperfection and gave him praise. She concluded her supplication by kissing the rosary again and declaring in a soft voice, "Glory be to the Father." Now she felt cleansed, purified, but not absolved. She knew she would never be absolved. The preparations were now complete. Mind, body, and rifle were ready. It was time to fulfill the contract. Carefully, she pulled the glass from the window, brought the stock of the rifle to her shoulder, and locked onto her soft target. The President-elect's image in the scope was so clean, Skylar could see his lips moving, his auburn forelocks riffling in the breeze. She heard the distant cheer of the crowd and his baritone voice broadcast over the loudspeakers. The sounds mingled with the noisy traffic on Colfax at Broadway. Her throat went dry. Our Father, who art in heaven. Once you fire, Skylar, close the hole quickly. Don't give the counter snipers time to lock on. Calmly, she moved the rifle a fraction of a millimeter to the right until the thin crosshairs of the calibrated reticle were lined up directly on Keeger's heart. Inside, she felt a palpable sense of danger. Her job demanded absolute perfection. There were no second chances. Thy kingdom come, project the bullet to the target, Skylar. Breathing in a controlled rhythm, she tightened her left hand around the buttstock and visualized the lengthy parabola the bullet would take in its travel path to the kill zone. Give us this day our daily bread. Control your hold, Skylar. Her finger curled confidently around the trigger as it had so many times before. There was no wobble or quiver. Her hands were steady as a surgeon's. And lead us not into temptation. Don't think, just feel, Skylar. Holding steady on the target, she willed herself into an almost trance-like state, the sniper's cocoon. With a world-class shooter's discipline, she summoned all her resolve, every ounce of concentration and professionalism she could muster, and channeled the energy into the shot. The field of fire turned preternaturally calm, noiseless. Her mind was totally lucid and unencumbered. No anger, no fear, no guilt, no doubt. There was only the rifle, her soft target, and the invisible arc connecting them. But deliver us from evil. Amen, she murmured aloud, concluding her prayer. And then, gently, she squeezed the trigger. So that, I kind of condensed it a little bit, but that's the beginning of the goal.
How do you know about the sniper's cocoon? I'm just a little curious. How do you know?
It's just, I just made that up, like most authors. They just make stuff up. That's what we did.
Other questions?
I have a question. So you've written a lot of books, and you're working full time. How did you manage that?
I'm barely alive, and I think I'm about to fall asleep in 5 minutes.
Oh.
No, it's a lot of work. I used to coach. I had 2 sons, and I was a lacrosse coach, high school lacrosse coach. So I used to coach ice hockey, roller hockey, and lacrosse with my sons, and spent a lot of time in that. And then they're in college playing lacrosse now, so I have a lot more free time, not having that part of my life. So I think that's I filled the void with writing.
Any other questions?
Great, thank you.
I once heard the same question asked of Walter Isaacson. And he said, I have dinner with my family, but I don't watch television. I write books. And I thought that was funny. And I've tried that, and it does work. Our final reader tonight is Carter Wilson. Right there. And Carter will read from his thriller Revelation, a thriller. USA Today best-selling author Carter, and let's just take a moment, because that is huge.
It sure
Congratulations, sir. Carter explores the personal depths of psychological tension and paranoia in his dark thrillers. His novels have been received critically, including starred reviews from Publishers Weekly and Library Journal. Carter's third novel, The Comfort of Black, won 3 literary awards, and he includes the 2016 Colorado Book Award in Thriller as that list. So, shall I set it up, or would you like to?
I'll set it up.
You will? Thank you, Carter. Here he is.
All right. Good evening. Thanks for staying until the end here. This doesn't need a whole lot of setup. Essentially, the book is about 4 college-age students who decide to start a religion on campus. And one of the students turns out to be a psychopath. So disastrous results ensue. This particular scene, again, doesn't need a lot of setup. What I'm going to read is a monologue. The monologue is from Coyote, who is the psychopath. He's the antagonist. He's 20 years old. He's a college senior. The setting is 1989. It's in a dingy motel room, and he's talking to a hooker. I was 13, on a camping trip with my dad in Virginia. One of those state parks that people get lost in all the time. They're so big. It was summer, and the heat was unbearable. I never understood why we had to go camping when it was so goddamn hot. My dad didn't even like camping, or me for that matter. But my mom had been dead for years, and my dad was always trying to find new ways to apologize for that. Camping was one of them. We were there 4 days, just the two of us. We'd wake up in the morning, and my dad would cook something up for us, and we'd spend most of the morning hiking. Fishing in the afternoon, usually. It was boring as hell. I think we were supposed to be bonding, but we always drove back home in silence. We never had anything to say. One morning, my dad wasn't feeling well, so we slept in. I made myself breakfast and headed out on my own. We had an expensive walkie-talkie set, so he could always contact me. I just began walking through the woods, making sure I kept a line in my head on which direction I'd come. I was just walking, nothing more. Just walking. After about an hour, I met another kid, a redhead kid, about 15. Pretty amazing I ran into anyone, actually, since I was off path. He was throwing rocks at a squirrel in a tree when he saw me. After a minute or so, he gave up and started talking to me. His name was Paul. He said his friends always called him Paul. I guess it was some kind of lame joke, but he laughed a lot at it. I remember that. I remember how the patches of his freckles bunched up when he laughed at his own stupid joke. He was camping with his parents at a site on the other side of the lake from ours, and had just been walking around by himself all morning. His parents just let him wander off. I mean, he was far away from his camp, much farther than I was from mine, and his parents had no idea where he was. How did they contact you, I asked. He just looked at me and laughed, those freckles bunching up again. They don't. I just show back when I feel like it. At that point, my dad called me to check in, his voice crystal clear over the walkie-talkie. I told him I was fine, and he told me to come back soon. I was thinking about turning back anyway, because something about this kid bothered me. I told Paul I had to leave, and I started to walk away, but he told me to wait. I asked him why, and he told me he wanted my walkie-talkie. I didn't understand, because the only person he could call on it was my dad. But then I realized he just wanted it. Not to use right then, but to keep. He wanted to take away my fancy Sharper Image walkie-talkie, the one my dad bought just for this trip. I told him no. That's when he tackled me. He was heavier and stronger than me, and seconds after he knocked me over, he had me pinned down. He grabbed the walkie-talkie and threw it to the side. After that, he just started hitting me. No reason at all. He had what he wanted. He could have gotten up and left, but he wanted to hurt me. I couldn't move, and he just wanted to throw some pain my way. He couldn't hit the squirrels, so he was going to hit me. I screamed, yelling at him to stop, but he wouldn't. He wasn't laughing, but his eyes were wide with excitement. Every time he punched me, his thick, rust-colored hair flung back and forth over his head. His teeth were crooked, and two of them jutted forward like they'd be perfect for opening cans. I stared at his ugly fucking face as he beat the hell out of me on that forest floor. At one point, I stopped feeling pain and real fear set in. This wasn't a boyhood fight. I was thinking, I'd had a few of those. This was serious. He was going to keep punching me until either he exhausted himself or I died. One of those things was going to happen in a matter of minutes if I didn't do anything. I swung at him, but my arms were long enough to reach his face, and he just dodged my swings and dug in with his own fists. Finally, I laid my arms to the side, and I found a rock. About the size of an apple, but not round like that. Sharp, like it had just broken off something bigger. I picked it up, and with just the little strength I had left, I threw it at him. It was a great shot. It smashed right in the middle of his forehead. He fell right off me and rolled onto his back. The kid was still conscious. He kept staring at the trees with a vacant look on his face, a large red knot forming on his forehead. There wasn't any blood. Not yet. No blood. Just a big red welt. He didn't move. His arms, his legs, anything. The only things moving were his eyes, back and forth. I got up and picked up the rock and stood over him. I could taste blood in my mouth. I could hardly breathe from all the punches he put into my stomach, but I was so full of rage I couldn't walk away. I had to look at him, you know? I had to look at this boy who tried to kill me. As I stared down at him, his eyes finally stopped moving and stared directly at me. He was wheezing from exertion. "I'm going to kill you now," he said. "Give me a second, then I'm going to kill you." I didn't even wait for him to start moving. I smashed the rock down on his skull, hard as I could. Then I did it again and again. I pounded his face with that rock until there seemed to be nothing left of his face at all. He didn't scream or move. He just lay there and died, those stupid freckles painted over with his blood. I knew he was dead the second the blood stopped bubbling underneath his nose. There was something, you know? I'll never be able to explain it, but there was something. The first time I hit him, all I needed to do was call my dad and this kid would have been okay. I had his life in my hands, and I could either save it or destroy it. I had the power to wipe out 15 years of living, breathing, walking, communicating. Gone like that, animated to lifeless, all based on what I felt like. I didn't have to kill him, but I wanted to. I wanted to. I wanted to feel like what it was like, not to hurt someone, but to control them on the ultimate level. It was like swimming in the deepest water. In the water you can float, you can carry things that are too heavy on land, drift, fly, anything. Killing that kid was just like floating. I could do anything, and that was all that mattered. Thank you.
So, Carter, how has it affected your psychological well-being?
That's assuming I had psychological well-being. My mom asked me the same question all the time. She said, "What did you do to screw me over?"
How did you, can you compartmentalize where you're not haunted?
I'm a totally happy guy. Yeah, no problem. I just get into that mode.
Stop worrying.
Yes.
Now, I'm curious, since the kid, your protagonist is obviously fairly badly beaten up. How does he square this with his parents when he's back?
Yeah, he has to explain that he got into a fight and that there's no evidence of the other kids. So, but they have a pretty fractured relationship, so the father didn't seem to care too much.
Those silences that teenagers have, we went into one of those, didn't it?
That's right.
Other questions?
Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right. Good job, everybody. But we put the food in an awkward place, so everybody was going to know you ate some if you came up here. But now that's over, so you can come help us with this food. I want to let you know that I didn't give Carter's form. That's give Carter's form. And then, would all the finalists please come up real quick, and let's a round of applause. Bess and Tommy, this is your photo op, but also, what questions do you have for this group? Any questions for the group of authors who have made it this far in their careers?
Yeah.
Any questions? Yes.
Collectively, how many times did you all try to give up before you started again?
Every day.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Can you quantify that? Like, how many books did you each write before you got to where you are?
Just hold your fingers in the air. 5 harder. 2.
Definitely 3. 3 before you get any sense of mastery.
A million words.
Practice novels, which the first time you hear that phrase is horrifying. Because you're like, but I put everything that I am into this novel. Well, you put everything into this novel, and then you learn that you kind of have to put it away and take everything you learned writing down and put it into the next one. And then the next one is so much better. So you're like, oh my God, thank God that person did that. Thank God no one read that.
The best tip is to find a good editor, somebody who's likes your character or likes your story or something and is willing to help you along and tell you the real truth about your writing. And it gets better.
Thank you. Any other questions for the group? Did you get your photo, Tom?
I did. I have one thing I want to add after we're all done here, though.
Okay, you go.
Okay, honestly, the only thing I want to do is turn this camera around and let people, because we've been streaming on Facebook for anybody who doesn't know, and there's been more than a handful of people who have tuned in. So I just want to go up there and turn the camera around and let people see how many people are here for this.
So if you're in a program where you don't want to be found.
Right. Yeah.
No pictures!
We already knew that, Larry.
Witness protection people, get out of this shot right now. But I just, we have a lot of events here all the time, and it's not always easy to let people understand how many folks have come out to see these things. And we got a handful of authors here, and we have a lot of people here to see them. So it's really great to give exposure to this, and like people care about this, right? All y'all care about this, and that's what's really special. So thank you to y'all. Thank you to our writers. These nights are so great, and I can't wait for the rest of them. So
Wait, one second. Can we get the 7 people out of the bathroom?
There they are. I got him.
Are they still there?
All right, we're good. Thank you, Josephine. Yeah.
All right. Any other questions that you thought of during the photo? Okay. No? All right, you're free to go. Thank you. Do return your forms. Thank you.